to the Legendarium podcast. We are in studio with the ladies of the Legendarium. I'm excited to be here with Megan. Just to get some house cleaning stuff out of the way, we are the Legendarium. You can find us at thelegendarium.com. Please join our conversations on Discord. We all love following what our listeners have to say. Tag us if you have something specific you want to say to us individually, and we're fairly good about responding in a semi-timely manner. You can support us through Patreon, and you can listen to our podcast wherever you happen to find your podcasts.
And it's free!
Yes! So, if you can't tell, it's me and Megan, and we are back. We have 3 more books of Harry Potter to discuss. And again, so much. We have not told anyone other than Ryan, who helped set this all up, that we are recording. So, another brand new episode surprise. I hope everyone's excited. You all seem to really enjoy our last episode we recorded. Now we're going to do a little bit more. We're recording so you can see our beautiful faces, because we are the better half looking fourth. I don't know. How many of us are there?
7. So we're 2/5 of the good-looking people.
We're the good 2/5 of the
top
podcast.
tiers.
Whatever that means.
I even put on lipstick, y'all. I dressed up. You who are just listening to the podcast, I may or may not be wearing my Slytherin tie and sweater. I am, actually. I don't know why I said may or may not be. I am. And also my snake earrings.
And her snake earrings.
That I bought with Stephanie at
JordanCon. Because Megan is definitely a Slytherin.
Yeah, I give off Hufflepuff vibes, but I'm a Slytherin.
I think we discussed this last episode, that you definitely are a Slytherin.
Yeah.
Cunning, devious,
mischievous,
loyal,
ambitious.
Yes, it's all Megan.
It comes out in other ways, y'all.
Okay, so we have the final 3 books in the Harry Potter series, which...
Do you want me to do a briefish recap?
Sure, can we do
We know my recaps are not short.
These are only the 3 longest books of the series.
It's true.
So, go ahead and attempt
I'm just going to do a brief-ish overview. We'll see how this goes. I haven't practiced any of it. Did I take any notes? No. I've read these books at least 7 times each. It's fine. We pick up at the beginning of Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, where Voldemort has returned. And Harry immediately told Dumbledore, and Dumbledore got together his Order of the Phoenix, like the people that he trusts, to help build up a resistance against Voldemort. Meanwhile, the rest of the wizarding world doesn't want to believe that he, who must not be named, except we're going to call him Voldemort because that's his name, has returned. And so they start vilifying Harry in the press and telling everybody that he's crazy and he's dangerous and he's a menace. And the Ministry, since nobody wants to take on the defense against the Dark Arts teaching job, hires the worst person in the world, Dolores Umbridge, to be Harry's teacher. And
There's an understatement.
Like, Harry's already having a hard time, but it just makes it more miserable. And even more miserable is the fact that he is now 15 and in the midst of puberty. And it's just... I'm so tired of yelling Harry. I can't read that book anymore. I have to listen to it on audio because it's just the worst. So, meanwhile, by the end of the book, everybody knows that Voldemort is back. He has revealed himself in the Ministry of Magic, and everybody knows. So in the 6th book, everybody, and Dolores Umbridge gets hers. I don't know. I hate her so much. So in the 6th book, everybody knows Voldemort's back. The world is getting gloomy and hard because Voldemort is just like, okay, well, I'm back, so I'm going to make the world terrible and destroy this bridge, and now the giants are out and about. In the 6th book, that's actually one of my favorites because I love that it's like all of this random teenage angst with like Harry wanting to date Ginny, and he's like, Ron is being all awkward with Lavender Brown, and Hermione is very jealous, and just all of this going on, and then you have this very major like shift in the last 5 chapters of the book where he and Dumbledore go looking for a Horcrux, which is a part of Voldemort's soul that keeps him more or less immortal. I'm not doing a great job doing this recap, and I don't care.
You're doing fantastic.
Oh,
You're doing
thank you
way
so
better
much.
than I would be.
But at the end of this, they go back to Hogwarts and find that Draco Malfoy has broken the Death Eaters into Hogwarts Castle, and Severus Snape kills Dumbledore, and all of the Death Eaters get away. Fast forward to number 7. So Harry decides that he can't go back to school because he has to go searching for all of the Horcruxes so that they can destroy the Horcruxes and finally just kill Voldemort for good. And so book 7, the Deathly Hallows, is all about Harry's journey to try to find these Horcruxes. And once he has destroyed all of them, they can have a big old battle at Hogwarts and destroy the school, but also kill off Voldemort and arrest the bad guys, and good people win and life continues and all is well.
That really is probably one of the shortest recaps for those 3 books. I think anyone could successfully manage.
Yeah. There's so many details I left out, but
But that was really the gist of it. I think we could be done, right?
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
What more is there to talk about?
This has been great. Thanks for letting me talk about Harry Potter.
Okay, so we might as well get started with book 5.
Okay.
So I forgot how much I don't like book 5.
It's the worst. Ugh. I actually really like the movie because I feel like they distill it down to, these are the good parts of the book. Introduce Luna Lovegood.
Oh, there are so many fun characters.
I know.
Yeah. There's a lot of fun stuff that happens in book 5, and Harry Potter has to ruin it. So if we can just take him out of book 5, it would be so much better. Because he is whiny and arrogant, and he's just mean to everyone. And I get that he's having a rough time.
I know, I want to be so empathetic, but
But at a certain point, you're just kind of get over yourself.
Yeah, it makes me so happy that there are a couple of times that Hermione just says, Ron and I would really like it if you would stop venting your spleen at us. We are on your side, by the way, so maybe be nicer to us because you need us and we love you.
And it's hard.
Don't be a
I've
jerk.
been there where you've had that friend that's constantly down just because they're going through some rough stuff and you're trying to be a good friend, but you're like, I don't know how much I mentally can handle you. Yeah. And that's how I started feeling about Harry. I'm like, I want to finish this book and I want to be yay, and you do good things. Mm-hmm. But Harry, I'm done with you.
I feel like this is one of those things, though. I know it's not just teenagers, but I talk to my friends who are I keep hearing about how my child is just this wonderful model student at school. And then he comes home and he's just so awful to me. And I guess I should take it as a compliment because that means that he feels safe with me and comfortable to be able to be his true self and be able to process these feelings with me. But also it would be nice if he were nice more often. Have you heard about this?
Yeah.
It's...
I have a 7-year-old and he hasn't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
And you talking about it kind of makes him not want to grow up.
Now you can be... Maybe that won't happen. I feel like I was a model child. So that never happened with me and my mom, to my recollection. Yeah, but I think about it, and poor Harry is just told over and over again, be under the radar with Dolores Umbridge, and you're not allowed to, be awful to everybody when you're out in public because he keeps getting these detentions, and it's just putting more pressure on him, and the rest of the Order of the Phoenix is the world already thinks you're crazy. You have to dial it down. And so... there is nobody else for him to vent his crazy on except for his friends.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, poor Ron and Hermione are just we can't do anything. We're trying so hard.
Well, I think it's mostly just for me with Harry. I'm at what point do you just need to suck up and deal with it?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I was starting to feel. I'm your life right now, though you have some crap to deal with, isn't that bad.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, at 15, the adults aren't telling you every little thing that they're going to do.
Yeah. And it's, yeah.
And it sucks, but we all have been teenagers, right? At some point. Adults don't tell you everything, and it sucks because you want to be an adult, but you're not quite an adult.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice that he ends up teaching the Dumbledore's army. He has that to work, because most of the time he would just the way that he would probably deal with those kind of things and take the stress off would be flying and playing Quidditch, but even that's taken away from him.
Yeah.
It's he doesn't have that, and it's oh, okay, I can teach the DA. I guess that's the one thing I can do. And I think that does kind of help him find a little bit more of a purpose and be okay, I'm still doing something even though I have to be here at school and I'm not helping anyone and I'm not doing anyone and nobody's making an extra effort, even though I'm the worst to be around right now. Yeah, but I think that's just such a cool idea that Hermione has to be like, Harry, you'd actually be a really good teacher. Like, you know how to do these things.
Yeah.
You faced Voldemort. Who better to teach us how to duel and face him than you? Which, it always makes me laugh when I think about how it was Gilderoy Lockhart that taught Harry how to duel.
It's true.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that wasn't the most effective lesson, but Harry learned one spell and he learned it really well.
So we have, since you brought up Dumbledore's army, we have some new characters that are kind of introduced, or at least become a bigger part of the book series, like Luna.
Yes.
Who doesn't love Luna, right?
It's impossible not to love her.
I adore her. She is so quirky and so crazy and just living her own life.
Yeah.
And I love Luna. She's one of my favorites. I think she's just, anytime she speaks, like, is it in this book? The other book that she does the commentary for the Quidditch game?
I think it is in the 6th book.
It's either the 5th or the 6th book.
Yeah.
And now that I said it, I think it's in the 6th book. So sorry, we're jumping ahead. But like, just, she's so funny.
Yeah.
I'm like, who talks like you?
Yeah.
No one talks like this.
And it's wonderful because they all look at her like she's crazy, but she also gives them permission to be a little bit weird and to like loosen up a little bit more. And, we're just going to, my dad and I are just going to, again, we're jumping forward, but like in the 7th book when they're at the wedding and she's like, Harry doesn't actually want to talk to us right now. He's just too polite to say so. So let's just go over here and dance. Like, it's fine. Because she says kind of the uncomfortable things, but she doesn't necessarily say them in an uncomfortable way.
Yeah.
And she does appreciate the cool things about everybody else and points them out. I think that's something that we need to hear a little bit more often where, Ron says something. She's like, oh my gosh, you're so funny. And I think everybody else is just like, oh, Ron. And he doesn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Because nobody ever says that to him. He doesn't get that kind of positive feedback.
Yeah. Anytime she's on, like in the books, I'm like, you just make me smile. You're one of those friends that you kind of listen to what they say and you smile at what they say because you don't necessarily believe what they're saying, but they're an amazing friend to have around. They're a great person to be. They're supportive. They're loyal. And so.
Yeah, and they love her as she is. They never ask her to be anything else.
So that's one thing that I thought that she's an interesting new mix to their group as she becomes, especially towards the second half, like when you get into 6 and 7, because she's one of the few still at Hogwarts with Neville at the time, and what they manage to do at Hogwarts while Harry's off being Harry and
hunting's Horcruxes.
Yes. So after everything, I mean, because when you think about, we're just going to talk about Luna through the remainder of the books.
Okay.
But when you think about some of the stuff that she went through when she gets kidnapped, abducted or whatever, like she's just kind of shoved into a corner. Like her poor father is
frantic,
trying to manage to do who knows what, and betrays Harry, which we can kind of forgive him for.
Yeah.
Because what else was he going to do?
Right.
But I think a lot of people forget exactly what she went through her entire storyline to still come out being willing to fight and to do good, and her positive attitude, even when they're in the basement of whoever's house. They're in the Malfoy's house with Ollivander.
Yeah.
So she's just fun.
Well, and even Ollivander says, Ollivander's been in that basement for like a year and a half.
Yeah,
and he tells Luna that you have just been such a light and such a comfort during this whole thing. And she's only been there a couple of weeks, and they just really rely on each other.
Well, and she's only, 14?
By the end, she's 16?
Yeah, because she's Ginny's age. Yeah. So she's 14 when we get introduced to her. So yeah, by book 7, she's only 16.
Yeah. It's crazy to think how much these kids like grow up in these last couple of books.
I've realized that a lot as I've listened to a lot of and read these teenage kind of young adult series that are all based off of teenagers. going, oh, I forget just how young you are.
Yeah.
And some of the character traits and stuff that you can kind of forgive a little bit because they're only 16, 17-year-olds. We were all stupid at 16 and 17.
But you think you know so much.
Yeah,
like
you
understand so much about the world.
But there's a lot of these books, especially coming out. Like we've been watching Wheel of Time on Amazon and some of that kind of stuff. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, these are just kids that have been forced to save the world. And like, so I can forgive some Harry, not all, just some Harry, your issues that you have, because you're kind of obnoxious to me. But
let's be honest, though, also, just this last comment about that. Harry has not had good behavior modeled to him.
it's very true.
Growing up. Like, anytime something bad happened to Dudley, like he only got 37 presents for his birthday. I'm sorry, 36. He had to throw a big fit about it. So what Harry knows is that if you're going through a rough time, you throw a big fit. And the people who love you, like Dudley's parents love Dudley, will just, take it and that's fine and, like do everything they can to fix it. And so
that is true. Okay.
There's a thought.
I'll consider.
I'm not saying that makes it any more manageable for the rest of us who hopefully had decent modeling of how to go through a rough time and support. But
sorry, we're just going to keep coming back and complain about Harry because we didn't talk about him at all in our last podcast.
We really didn't.
We're going to just complain about him.
It's so funny. We got
time,
to the end.
right?
Like, we didn't talk about Harry. We didn't talk about Voldemort. Huh.
So now we'll just complain about Harry because
he's just kind of unbearable. I mean, I love sarcastic Harry, but he's kind of the fifth book is just really hard to read.
Yeah, he gets a little bit better in the next two in 6 and 7.
Yeah,
I think by 7, it's not so much his poor me attitude that it just gets rough hearing like everything he's going through.
Yeah,
by book 7, and he's frustrated and he's angry, and his mentors and these people that he has loved and have supported him are dying.
Yeah.
And I think so it's a little bit easier to judge some of his attitudes. Like there's that big, massive blowout fight that he has with Ron, and Ron leaves while they're searching for the Horcruxes. And poor Hermione has like the boy that she's obviously in love with, but she knows deep down that Harry needs her more. And she stays by his side as like a loyal friend. And so I can kind of understand not knowing like all of these people are fighting and I'm doing this work and I don't know what's going on and I can't stop any of it. So I can kind of understand where his frustrations come.
Yeah.
By book 7, it's not quite as, oh my gosh, am I done? Like, is Harry done? Please give me something else to listen to other than Harry whining and his poor me attitude. So by book 7, he's still a little rough to listen to, but not a lot more understandable as to why.
Right. And it's difficult because Harry is the one having, as far as we know, he's the one having the hardest time, but it's not like anybody else's lives are all that easy.
No.
Like everybody's struggling. Everybody hates Umbridge. She's terrible to everyone. And she's especially awful to Harry because the Ministry of Magic is super anti-Harry at this point. But everybody is struggling. Like nobody's having an easy time during that year. Like to the point where the Weasley twins are like, peace out, mic drop, we're gone. Here's some fireworks later.
Let's talk about Umbridge, who in my mind has to be the worst character ever created.
Like the most hateful character?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, she's not written poorly. She's not a poorly written bad character.
Oh, yeah, no.
She's just evil incarnate.
Yeah, and it's a terrifying thing that I think. Well, I love talking to people, and they're like, "I think I hate Umbridge worse than Voldemort."
Oh yeah,
because she is the real life bully that probably everybody has had one in their life, where they have this person that thinks that they are right all the time, and everything they do is right, and they just treat people like garbage for their own ends, and it's just like.
But she's also so sickly sweet about it.
Yes, which is the worst part of it.
She's standing there in her pink little cardigan sweater and her cat plates and like smiling as Harry has blood dripping down his arm because she thinks that him carving "I will not tell lies" into his hand is
because deep down he deserves it. He knows that he deserves it.
Oh gosh, she is the worst, and she always makes me so mad. Which probably doesn't help book 5 at all either.
No, it really doesn't.
Because she is
the fact that she comes back later, and I love that Harry's response is, "I'm sorry, she's still working for the Ministry."
Oh no, kidding!
What? I'm sorry, what? How was that a thing? Because she botched it all so royally.
Oh yeah, when she was at Hogwarts, she's one that I don't understand how she came back from that.
Yeah.
With everything that had happened, especially when at the very end, when everyone agrees that Voldemort's back and everything, that like, oh, well, you were the one that was saying he wasn't. You were the one making a big deal about this. You took over Hogwarts. You discredited Dumbledore. Like,
yeah, it's interesting to me, and it's a thing that irks me about human nature, where they find out that Harry was correct and, oh, Voldemort is real, Voldemort's back. Nobody ever apologized to Harry. There's no, like, retraction in the Daily Prophet. They kind of like, oh, and now we have this interview where they basically just steal Rita Skeeter's interview about what happened that night. And nobody really talks to Harry about it. They're just like, and this is something that he holds on to and he references again. And I want to say that probably the last book, where he's just like, yeah, you all decided that I was going to be like your mascot for everything's fine. We're handling it. It's okay. But nobody ever apologized to me. Nobody was ever like, you're all just in it for what's in it for you. You're not caring about me as a human being and looking for me to actually be useful and helpful.
Well, and even once Fudge gets kicked out of office and who was it? I don't remember what the guy's name is.
Rufus Scrimgeour.
Yes, I knew you'd remember what his name was that took over for the Ministry. Yeah. Even he wasn't like, he had no intention of apologizing, or he's like, oh, well.
Again, whatever they do is right.
Come be with us, because we need your support to tell everyone else it's okay.
Yeah, everybody looks at you as this symbol of hope, except for that year when we told everybody that you were crazy and made life miserable for you.
Okay. Okay, so there is one thing. We are talking so much about book 5. We're going to spend this entire episode just talking about book 5.
It's a really long book.
But that I did enjoy and I loved. And I think it was some of the clarification that we get with Neville as a character.
Yes.
I adore Neville. I don't even really know why. I don't know if it's just like the movies that made it, that I just think he's so cute. Like, he's just a cute kid. He's like 12 inches taller than me now, and I really shouldn't be calling him a kid. But I don't know what it's about him. But Neville, I just love. He's just that, he's so lovable, and he's so loyal. And he's that one character that you're like, how in the world are you not a Hufflepuff? Yeah. And he proves himself time and time again that he deserves to be in the Gryffindor house. No matter what anyone else says, like, he hasn't had an easy childhood. We find out in book 5 where his parents actually are when Harry sees him in St. Mungus. So we find out that his parents are still alive, which I think was kind of sketchy to begin with. You kind of just assumed he's being raised by his grandma, that his parents were killed in the first Wizarding War or whatever it was. But they weren't. They were tortured by Bellatrix.
Right.
So I love hearing more about that from him. I think you get a little bit better feeling as to Neville's relationship with his grandmother.
Yeah.
Who never shows up in the movies at all. And so that was one thing, like, especially in this book, you find out about the prophecy, which is the whole reason they end up at the Department of Mysteries.
Right. Well, it's the whole reason that Voldemort went after Harry's family in the first place.
They're all trying to find out about this prophecy that at the time, Voldemort only got half of the prophecy that Trelawney had prophesied. Is that the right word? Prophesized? Sure. To Dumbledore.
New words.
Before Harry was born. And so they have this prophecy that Snape overheard, but only overheard part of it, and went to go get Dumbledore. And Dumbledore then is like, oh, okay, well, it must be this Harry Potter kid, so I'm going to go after him and his family. And then we find out that it actually could have been either Harry or Neville.
Right.
Which I love. I was like, can I just have this alternate universe where Neville was the chosen one, like what would that look like? What would that have done to Neville's life?
Right.
I mean, he still
and Harry's life.
He still would have been raised in the wizarding world. Mm-hmm. He had his grandmother. And I love the fact that Dumbledore points out that the whole reason that Voldemort chose Harry was the idea that he could see himself in Harry, that Harry's the half-blood, where Neville's the pure-blood. And I don't know, there's just so much about Neville's story that kind of comes to light.
Yeah.
That isn't necessarily Neville himself, but you just find out so much more about his past and where he's coming from, maybe why he's the insecure kid that he is. But, of course, by the end of book 7, you have Neville, who is leading Dumbledore's army at Hogwarts, which is phenomenal. Like, it's so funny when he's the one that comes out of the painting at Aberforth's house, and he brings everyone back into Hogwarts, and he's like, look at what we're doing. And he's, like, all bruised and bloody and everything's like, what do you need fighting? To do next? And I'm... Like, he's the one causing all of the problems, and he's the one constantly getting detention and doing all this stuff that...
Well, and even Seamus is like, Neville really understands the room of requirement, like how you have to say exactly what you need, and it provides. And Neville is an underdog, and he just really... He comes into his own, and it's not even just him. Like, and he's one of the people standing up to Voldemort in that final battle saying, you know, you are not winning. Like, we... are still loyal to Harry, and even if Harry's dead, we're still going to fight in his name. Like, we're going to fight for his cause.
Well, and the fact that he's able to pull Gryffindor's sword out, he's the one that kills Nagini at the very end, that allows Harry to do all of the other stuff he needs to do in the final chapters of book 7. Like, I just love Neville, and I loved hearing more about his prophecy and what he was going through, and that it could have been Neville. And now that's what I want. What could have been?
Right.
What would have this been like?
There was some speculation before, I want to say it was before the last book came out. Because I remember that time. I was an adult when the last book came out. And there's some speculation that maybe, like, Voldemort got it wrong and Neville was, in fact, the chosen one. But, like, Voldemort was so focused on Harry that he'd miss it and Neville would take him out from behind kind of thing. And that's not what ended up happening. But there were some people who were like, I kind of wish that is what would have happened because that was kind of a cooler concept.
Well, it kind of is what happened-ish. Because without Neville doing his part, Harry couldn't have done his part. Because Harry never even got close enough to Nagini to take care of her. So... True. Neville didn't even know really what he was doing at the time. He was just be like, oh, snake, sword, death.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Harry does say, like, you know,
we need to take out the snake.
If you see it, you need to, he's like, and Neville just finishes the sentence. He's like, kill the snake. Gotcha.
Kid, done. I'll do it. Yeah, right. Sure. I'm cool like that now because I'm just going to go kill a snake.
But Neville, like, he grew up in the wizarding world with his parents basically insane. He has seen the kind of damage that Voldemort can do and that there are worse things than death. And I think that gives him a lot of additional strength, especially when Voldemort comes back and he starts seeing it all happening again. And he sees Bellatrix. And, like, it's when Bellatrix is released from Azkaban that Neville really steps it up and is like, nope, she is not doing that to anyone else.
Well, and they have a moment in the Department of Mysteries that they're dueling. And she's mocking him because she finds out that he's a Longbottom and she knows what she did.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, I took care of your parents. I'm going to do the same thing to you, and just mocks him about it and how angry and upset he gets during that. And so, I don't know. I love Neville, and I love his storyline. That's one of my favorite things about book 5 that I think kind of puts Neville on a higher pedestal is, like, he goes from secondary character that's just kind of there to more of a supporting role of someone that's important to this storyline that we need to hear from and we need to find out what they're doing. And
a true ally.
They really start driving the plot points forward through the end of the books. And I love Neville.
I agree.
Anyway.
I'm
just going to, like, as much as I hate Harry in book 5, Neville, let's gush on Neville.
We can gush on Neville. He's a sweetheart. Well, we have Neville and Luna, and it is nice to have these little bright spots of these... You know, Harry has these true friends that he doesn't even realize at the time how important they are going to be for him. And And also Ginny, because he always looked at Ginny as, you know, Ron's little sister.
Yeah.
Like, oh, here she is. She's not one of the people I would have chosen to take with me to the Ministry of Magic. But again, she holds her own.
Yeah.
And she's 15 or 14.
Yeah, in this book, she's 14.
Yeah.
And yeah, both her and Luna are 14.
I mean, you can kind of understand why he'd be like, you guys stay here. And at the same time, like, it turns out she's scrappy. She's the only girl, but like, she's a girl and she's young.
She was raised around how many brothers?
Well, and I just love that she says it outright at one point. She's like, you know, when you grow up with Fred and George as your brothers, you kind of learn that anything's possible. So if you've got enough nerve, so.
Yeah, I think she has to be scrappy or she wouldn't have survived her childhood at all with six older brothers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Percy.
Aw.
Can I tell you, though, I think Percy's journey is so interesting through these last 3 books, and I cry every time I read book 7 and they're in the room of requirement, and all of a sudden he stumbles in, and they have one very brief scene where the whole family is together.
Yeah.
Before they lose Fred. And Fred is the very first one who forgives Percy and says, you know, yeah, you were a ministry-loving prat. Glad to have you back. We missed you, bud. And so the fact that he's the one that dies and Percy is just so... because Percy lost those 3 years with his family. Like, he
I think
wasted
out of
all that
everyone,
time.
especially in the book, you find out how hard that last battle was for Percy. And I think it was a lot to do with his previous choices and how much he supported the ministry as much as they lied. And to the point, like, I mean, he wrote Ron saying, hey, you don't want to be friends with this kid because he's insane.
Yeah. It's insane, and it'll go badly for you
Yeah.
if you're at all ambitious, because you're a prefect now. Let's not go the Fred and George route. Ugh, Percy. And he's another one where I think he's doing the best he can with the information that he has, and I kind of wonder sometimes if he, you know, once they knew that Voldemort was back, if he was kind of like, I kind of want to go back home, but also I'm just not ready to have that conversation.
Yeah. And he's one that, I don't know, I'm a youngest child. I'm the youngest of 3. I have very much a lot of the traits of a youngest child. And so I have a hard time putting myself in the shoes of someone like Percy, which when you think about Bill and Charlie and what they did in their times at Hogwarts, what they were going on to do with their lives, how successful they were, how perfect they were, how loved they were. And here comes Percy, which he's like, what do I have?
Yeah, I'm a middle child.
I'm not doing anything new. Being a prefect isn't new. Being head boy isn't new because his brothers have already done it. Like,
but he's the one that works for the Ministry of Magic.
and
Like, he gets that job.
To understand why he was pushing himself so hard to succeed and try to do something that his older brothers hadn't done.
And his younger brothers probably won't.
I mean, yeah, you're being followed up by Fred and George.
Yeah.
You're going to look successful no matter what you do.
Right?
Especially
Except Fred
according
and George
to him.
surprise everyone with it's like, oh, turns out we need a little laughter right now.
Yeah, being like, of course, they're also like crazy business savvy and everything. Like, I love Fred and George.
It's hard not to.
I know. They're just, again, that in such heavy books, you need that extra bit of laughter every once in a while. And I think Rowling's done a great job in adding those characters that come in and out of Harry's life to remind him that there are things to smile about.
Yeah. Well, and it also helps. I mean, we all talk about the Weasleys like adopting Harry as family, but Fred and George really do treat Harry like they're his older brothers. They give Harry the Marauders map. Like, they're just like, we can see that you need something. Here you go. Let's all sleep in this room together, apparently, because we all, it's like, just, again, it's just nice that Harry does have a lot of that support that he may or may not notice, but, he gets that family and all these big brothers. And Percy is not like the warm, loving big brother, but Fred and George absolutely are.
Are there any other, I guess we can keep talking about characters that have shown up? Not necessarily in book 5. Have we kind of talked about, I mean, the only thing we really talked about book 5 is Sirius. You learn a lot about Sirius in book 5.
And the Black family.
The Black family. We have Creature, the house elf that gets introduced in book 5. But
becomes important later.
Yeah, he's kind of an important character to introduce, but he's just obnoxious through book 5.
It's true.
But I kind of feel bad for Sirius, but he's, again, like, I think he adds to that whininess of Harry because he's going through his own stuff, but he's an adult. So you're like, suck it up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I don't mean to minimize your feelings, but find something. Take up knitting. I don't know.
Go do something productive.
Yeah.
Because this is your life right now. So, I don't know. He's one that he was in Azkaban for years upon years, having hope and joy and life drained out of him. So, to end up back in a prison of some sort, of his own home that he hated.
Right.
That now he's stuck in this place that he tried so hard to escape from as a child.
And it does legit sound like a miserable place.
Oh, gosh. Every time you walk by this painting in the hallway, it starts screaming
right?
at you.
Ugh. And then you have Creature like wandering in the middle of the night. No, thank you.
Mumbling to himself. And then, of course, at the very end of book 5, we have Sirius going through the veil after being hit by a curse from Bellatrix.
Which I will go on record as saying, I think it's a really stupid death. It's so confusing. Like, no wonder Harry's like, no, he's not dead. He's just dead. Right there. Like, it's never really explained.
I actually got onto the wiki fandom page for Harry Potter to look up what they claim the veil is. And it's exactly what it sounds like.
Okay.
That it's definitely pulled from like those religious connotations of the veil, the other side, the idea of an afterlife. And I was reading something about where Hermione is the one that's kind of like, let's stay away. That thing seems dangerous. We shouldn't go near that. And everyone else is drawn towards it. And on the wiki page, it comments that out of all of them, Hermione is the one that it alludes doesn't believe in an afterlife.
Oh, okay.
So she would naturally not have the same draw to death and those on the other side as those like Neville and Luna and Harry and people that have all lost someone close to them that would want the idea of seeing them again.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of interesting, that kind of put Hermione in that very scholastic kind of box of this is fact because this is what I can read and this is what I can prove. And the afterlife doesn't fit into that. So Hermione doesn't believe in it. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I was like, I just never, it fits Hermione's character, but I didn't read into that that way.
I hadn't really thought about it.
So, but anyway, the veil, that's what it is, because they don't really explain it very well in the book. It's just this archway.
Just falls into death.
Yeah.
All right.
He's just there. He dies because people don't come back. Of course, the department doesn't even know what it is. That's why it's in the Department of Mysteries, in a locked room, in the middle of like an empty locked room at that. Like that. So.
Yeah. So they can study it. So they can sit there and listen. And it's just like, but what? I don't know.
Throw like balls into it.
Experiments.
I'm sure people have walked through that.
Do you tie a bird to a string and let it fly through? And how? Maybe I shouldn't think too much about this.
What experiments would we do on the veil?
The whole sequence with the Departments of Mysteries, and they're running through all of these things, and I'm like, these are really interesting. Oh, maybe.
Where do I feel like I've seen that done before?
I feel like we're stepping into like. Did you watch Supernatural?
I did.
Yeah, like they'd like tie themselves like to some rope and like go into and you're just like, oh, maybe I'm thinking of. Oh, see, and now I'm thinking of all of the different situations, but I can't think of what it is. The one with the... Oh, no. Okay, never mind. Let's move on.
I'm sure there's several.
It's going to take me too long to remember what it is.
But anyway.
Yeah, it sounds like something from Supernatural.
Yeah. I don't know.
The one with the character 11. Like the
that's
girl.
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things. Sounds like something from Stranger Things as well. Okay. Thank you. Now we can move on.
Okay. So, book 5. Anything else exciting happen in book 5?
No, I just, probably, but, Harry's occlumency lessons with Snape.
Ah, yes.
Also hate those. They make me so upset. But you do get a lot more insight into Severus Snape and who he is. And why how miserable his life was.
Why he hates Harry.
No, I mean, you
find at the very end
why he hates Harry's dad so much.
At the very end, you finally find when Harry's able to get into Snape's head, and you see that memory with James and Sirius and Lupin, and they're mocking Snape, and Snape turns on them, and it feels like that's the moment that Lily gave up on their friendship, which then in turn, obviously, he would blame James.
Yeah, and the fact that Harry looks so much like James would just be just really twisting that knife.
I don't know. Snape is one of those characters that even deep down, I'm still feeling like, was he really Dumbledore's man?
If Voldemort had killed Neville's parents instead of Harry's, Snape would have been the most loyal Death Eater in the world.
Yeah, but even then, I'm kind of surprised after they're not able to save Lily and James. Like, why, when they can't save Lily, when Lily still dies, why Snape stayed with Dumbledore?
I think it's mostly the guilt. The guilt that it's his fault because he's the one that told Dumbledore he's the one that told Voldemort about the prophecy, and Voldemort interpreted that as Harry's parents.
But the whole thing, like, when he went to Dumbledore to try and save them, and he was like, I don't care what happens to James and Harry, just save Lily. Like, can you save her? Can you protect her? And Dumbledore said, we'll do our best. And she still dies. I'm just still surprised that Snape...
To be fair, Lily sacrifices herself because Voldemort does tell her, get out of the way. But I just want to kill it. And she makes the choice to stand
Snape is already crazy.
I know. He's not a nice person. He's very much in his own head. Everyone's out to get him, poor me.
So the fact that he stayed that loyal to Dumbledore. I mean, he's crazy loyal to Dumbledore, which I don't think is warranted for his personality.
I could see that.
For me, that's just, he's one of those characters that even to the very end when he's dying and he gives Harry his memories and everything, and you find out how much he truly loved Lily, and you find out his Patronus and blah blah blah, crazy obsession with Lily, way
it's
beyond.
Not really love at that point.
Not
it's
really.
A weird obsession.
Yeah, it's crazy obsession. Creepy. He's still that one. I'm like, but I don't know. Who is he really helping?
Yeah, I kind of wonder if at that point, Snape just feels like he's so far into it that he can't not support Dumbledore anymore. Because if he just went full Death Eater, well, at some point it would come out that he was Dumbledore's man, and Voldemort would be like, can I trust you?
Well, it almost feels like the easiest way out.
Yeah.
I'm going to be crazy loyal to both of them, and no matter who wins, I win.
That's true.
Because I'm
literally
crazy
nobody
loyal to
except
both
Dumbledore
of them.
knew that he was loyal to Dumbledore.
And we all know that with his conversations with Bellatrix and everything, that he's Voldemort's number one man.
Yeah, that's a surprising thing.
So, you are playing both sides too well, and I don't know if you're really helping a whole lot.
It's true.
I don't know. He's just one. I don't know. What are your feelings about Snape?
We even find out that when he does end up killing Dumbledore, it was basically Dumbledore had asked him to.
He kind of forced him into it.
He really forces him into it because Dumbledore doesn't want Draco to be the one to kill him because that would destroy Draco. And he's like, no, Draco still has a chance. Draco could still be
You're a lost cause,
being.
So you do it.
Basically. And Snape totally calls him out on it. It's like, that's really mean. And Dumbledore's like, well, sorry.
You chose your life. I don't know.
You're too far into it now.
He's just, I think, that one character that I'm like, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy?
I think he's deliberately a gray character.
I don't know.
He's not really a hero. The fact that Harry names one of his kids after him, I'm still
That's weird to me.
Why?
Yeah.
Not Hagrid, not Remus.
My sister has a friend that named their actual child, sport child. His name is Severus.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
So just know that's your line, Megan. Don't cross that line.
Okay. Noted.
You can be
of
obsessed.
all the names I can pick out in Harry Potter,
Harry Potter. Don't do that to your child.
So I can't have twins and name them Severus and Dolores?
No. No.
I wouldn't anyway.
No. No, on so many levels.
Okay.
But yeah, my sister has a friend.
Talk me down.
I'm like, interesting. It's an interesting choice of all of the book characters in the entire world. That he's the one that you chose. I don't know if that's the kind of role model I want to be like, this is who I named you after.
I really like the memes that are like Harry dies and gets to the afterlife, and Remus and Hagrid are both just standing there staring at him, and he's like, hey guys, what's up? Something wrong, Remus? He's like, now you remember my name? Okay, great.
I know, like with anyone, there are like so many stronger role models in Harry's life that would have been better to name his child after. But whatever. Sure.
It's fine.
Great.
At least Lily was named after, like, his daughter Lily is Lily Luna.
Yeah.
So, got one thing right.
Who's the oldest?
James.
James. What's his middle name?
I want to say Sirius.
That's how I feel.
I'm not positive, but I want to say.
That's what I think. I think it might be Sirius. Yeah. I'd have to look that up.
I would
We're
too.
pretty close.
Yeah.
And then
it sounds right.
Isn't it? Because it's Albus
Severus,
right?
Yeah.
And he's the one that ends up it's his story in The Cursed Child.
Yes.
Right? Okay,
Yeah.
I have not read The Cursed Child, but thank you to the internet. I went down that rabbit hole and know way more about The Cursed Child than I did beforehand.
Well, and I'm sad because Cursed Child, then out, like, it's this, I've seen it. It's stunning. I personally don't think the script, I think is lacking because I think the villain is lame, but, that's all I'll say about that. But it was like 2 plays. It was 4 acts. So it was 2 full plays, and they've now shortened it. So it's just like 2 acts of 1 play. And some of the things that I'm hearing that they changed about it, I'm not thrilled about. But yeah, Cursed Child, it focuses mostly on Albus Severus and his question, like, what if I end up in Slytherin? And that's like the first thing that happens is he does end up in Slytherin.
And he becomes friends with Draco's son.
Scorpius, who is my favorite.
So if you want to continue on with your Harry Potter reading and haven't read The Cursed Child, I don't know, maybe find the original script. We have a script in our Harry Potter pile.
I will say, though, and I'm not saying that it's akin to Shakespeare, but I feel like if you're going to read a play, you should read it out loud with other people or listen to it on tape or something like that.
To get more of the feel of like the characters.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Like people complain about Shakespeare and I'm like, yeah, because you have to sit and read it. That's not
It doesn't
fun.
read well.
No.
So Cursed Child, it's a play. It was on It started in the West End in London.
It's on Broadway. I mean, it closed a couple days ago due to COVID.
It moved to Broadway. So it's still out and about, but Cursed Child, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Continuing the story.
It's wonderful fan fiction.
Of... Well, and it's all canon, right? It's all...
In my head, it's fan fiction.
Let's just tag that on again. Okay, so we were just talking about The Cursed Child, which is nothing...
We didn't really have much to say about it, except that's what it is.
It's there. Find out for yourself if you want to read it.
Yeah. But yeah, Albus Severus, Severus Snape is just such a tricky, problematic character where literally, like, he's always... Until Voldemort tells Harry in book 5, like, no, actually, I trust Severus Snape. Like, he's part of the Order of the Phoenix, so you're just going to have to trust me on this. But in books 1 through 4, like, anytime something goes wrong, Harry assumes that it's Snape. And after that, he assumes that it's Draco. And fun fact, he is correct. And I think that's one of the most devastating things in the Order of the Phoenix is when, because that whole time Harry is like, there's something weird going on. Like, he keeps going to the Room of Requirement, and we don't know why, and we're not sure what's going on up there, but it can't be good. And then it turns out Draco lets in the Death Eaters, and ends up getting Dumbledore killed, and Ron and Hermione are both just devastated. Because this whole time they've been like, Draco's 16, he's 15, no, I'm thinking the 6th book. I jumped forward.
That's okay, we can talk about the 6th book.
We can.
Draco's one of those that I feel like you feel sorry for because he had no chance whatsoever.
Yeah, he grew up so entitled.
Well, and he already. Whoops. Sorry. Oh, I hit the repeat. Whatever. But Draco's one of those characters that you kind of just, I feel sorry for. Mm-hmm. Because he really does. He has no chance. He was raised by
mega Death Eaters.
Death Eater parents, like right-hand man of Voldemort.
Voldemort's living in their house.
Yeah, he's being raised. And of course, like, he comes home from school and all of a sudden Voldemort's in his house for the summer. Like, hey, you're here. You don't have a choice because your parents are in deep. So,
well, his dad at that point, like Order of the Phoenix. Oh no, never mind.
So at the end of book 5, it's his fault. It's Lucius's fault that the prophecy gets smashed and everything that happens.
But he's also in. Yes.
And so by then he's kind of fallen from grace.
Right.
And he's no longer the head of the Death Eaters when Voldemort's not around. And he loses a lot of respect from a lot of people.
He does. And I love the way Jason Isaacs plays him in the films because he does such a good job of showing that change where like he's on top of the world. He's the most arrogant man you'll ever meet. And then he's just like broken. And it's horrible. Like literally Voldemort takes his wand and breaks it in half.
Yeah, and he loses a lot. He's kind of lost his work at the ministry. Mm-hmm. He's now just at home with Voldemort, being constantly reminded.
And everybody knows that he's a terrible human being. Like, he doesn't even have his reputation anymore amongst the regular wizarding world.
So, to end up where Draco, and who knows whether Draco even wanted to. I mean, as much as Draco complains about Dumbledore throughout the early books, I think it's one thing to say that Draco enjoys his time at Hogwarts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's enjoying being there.
Slytherin Common Room is cool.
By book 5, he's a prefect. He has his crazy power, like, lets that go to his head, but it's there. And he works under Umbridge, which... Yeah. But
he's like, at least one girl is fawning all over him, so he's a cutie and he thinks the world of himself there.
Yeah, so it's like one of those things. And then to come home, spend the summer with Voldemort at your house, your parents are disgraced, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, you can get into Hogwarts, so this is now your job.
Yeah, you're a Death Eater now. You have to kill Dumbledore. So, that's literally a job he is given, to kill Dumbledore.
You're 16. Here, you go kill a wizard I'm scared of.
Yeah.
Go. Have fun. And if you don't do it, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah. I mean, Voldemort really was intending for Draco to fail. But
yes, we all know that. But because his mother even, that's the whole point of the way that she sets up the unbreakable vow with Snape, that kind of snowballs all of Draco's storyline throughout the whole thing of Snape trying to help him but not help him, because who knows what side Snape's really on. Because like Snape has to care about Draco. Snape's been seeing him for the past 3-4 years more than his own parents have. It's so true. Probably has some weird fatherly affection of some sort.
Well, and Snape was probably a family friend even before then.
Yeah, to be kind of thrown into all of this, and who knows if Draco was really, like, wanting to.
Right.
Did he want to be a Death Eater? I don't know. He just didn't have a choice. It was just whether it was an expectation that he grew up with. Like, this is... Because that's probably the other thing is, I don't think his parents ever expected Voldemort to really come back.
I'm sure they didn't.
So, Draco, I doubt, even though he was raised with... the pure blood idealists ideas, but
yeah, well, in Draco, you just know that he was raised in this atmosphere of you're a pureblood, so that makes you superior to everyone. Like, you are amazeballs, you are the smartest, you are the handsomest, you are the richest, you deserve every good thing. And he gets to school and like meets Harry Potter, the most famous wizard of his age. And Harry immediately is like, no, I don't want to be friends with you. And then Draco is like expecting to be the smartest one in school. And it turns out a muggle is like a muggle-born is smarter than he is. And like there's canon that Draco is always second in his class, right behind Hermione. Except for Defense of the Dark Arts, where it's Harry who's always at the top of the class. But it's like Draco's always right up there, and he's just like, I'm supposed to be this special kid. Like everything's supposed to come so easily to me, and I'm I'm supposed to leave this charmed life, and you guys are messing it up for me.
Yeah.
So how am I going to fix that? Oh, Umbridge hates you? I'm going to be on Umbridge's side because I hate you too. I don't know. I think Draco is such an interesting character.
Well, and then, of course, by the end, you have him who's at school in the 7th year, right? Doesn't he go back to Hogwarts?
Yes, he does.
Because I know that
there's kind of a question mark at one point.
He's still at Hogwarts, or he's there because that's what. Because he's there in the room of requirement when Harry's looking for the diadem.
Yeah,
with Crabbe and Goyle.
Yeah, but at that point, like, I feel like he goes home for spring break and just stays home.
Because remember, when they start evacuating the kids during.
Yes, but right before then, Harry. No, it is a couple months beforehand. You're right, but when they go to rescue like Luna and Ollivander at Malfoy Manor, Draco Malfoy is there. But I think they do say that
wasn't
it's
that
during
like
spring
Christmas?
Break. I think it's spring break.
Do they have a spring break?
I don't know,
like Easter holiday or something.
Draco goes. He's home for some reason.
It's a school,
but he goes
break.
back to the school. Yeah, no, I think they do have an Easter holidays. So maybe, like, Harry never went home for the Easter holidays.
No, he rarely went home for any holidays.
Yeah, but maybe some people did, because Draco, like, he loved his family. He was all in.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he go home?
So it was for a holiday. But he's there.
But no, you're right. He is there at the end.
He's there.
And Crabbe and Goyle are really good at the terrible evil curses.
They don't leave with the rest of the Slytherins because they basically tell all of the Slytherins to leave because no one trusts them, even though they would have been of age during the final battle, and they stay. They sneak back or whatever, hide themselves so they don't leave.
Yeah. Because
they're the ones in the room of requirement that Harry ends up saving. And at the very end, when Harry supposedly dies and what's her name? Draco's mother.
Narcissa.
Yes. Sissy. I think is that what Bellatrix calls her? Is the one that's supposed to check to see if Harry's alive or not.
Yes.
And all she wants to know is if Draco is alive in the castle, and Harry acknowledges that he is, and she's like, "Yep, he's dead. Let's get to the castle," which I thought was kind of fun and interesting.
Yeah,
twist
lies to Voldemort's face
on her. That in the end she's not.
Well, she was never technically actually a Death Eater. Like, her sister is, her husband is, she's around all of them, but she, like, doesn't have the mark on her arm. She's just, like, a trusted personality, I guess.
She's just one of the purebloods that is around.
Right.
I was in the room.
With a lot of influence.
I was in the room when it happened. Is that what?
Yeah.
Enjoy that comment if you know what it's from.
Don't sing, Megan.
Let's see. What else? I think Slughorn is another character we get introduced to.
Talk about Slughorn.
He gets introduced in book 6. That he is the new potions teacher.
The new old potions teacher.
He comes back out of retirement.
Which is crazy because you think about it, and like Snape, I mean, Slughorn has probably been retired for a while. Like at least 7 years that we know about. And so for Dumbledore to be like, "So you're ready to come back?" I mean, it sounds like Slughorn taught for a good 50 years.
Yeah.
But he's been retired for a while, so that is kind of a big ask, which is really cool. But he's really good at it. But it's interesting that it isn't until, I may be jumping around a little bit, but
We're jumping around a lot.
Slughorn literally teaches by the book, which you'll notice later on that because Harry gets like this copy of the Half-Blood Prince's potions book, which helps him become a really good potions person, really good at potions, and then you find out that it was Snape. But when you go back and look at the way Snape teaches, he didn't ever teach out of a book. He always had the recipes written on the board. Because he was a better potions master than whoever wrote the book was. But yeah, Slughorn is another one of those that you kind of feel like was introduced a little bit to be kind of a comedic character and another one of those really arrogant, kind of unlikable, and at the same time you're like, but you're like a mildly unlikable person.
Now you're going to hate me. I was like, as talking about like Slytherins, because obviously
because he's one of the good Slytherins.
Yeah.
He totally is.
He's like you.
Oh, okay. I would like you to expound upon that.
As you just went off about how he's so unlikable. And
there are just certain things that he does that is like, it's so off-putting to Harry and the others, and they're like, okay.
Well, he's definitely a very arrogant kind of person. I think it's funny that as a Slytherin, he is the type of person that wants to have greatness around him, but is happy not being great himself.
Right.
Which is weird for a lot of people to think of.
Right.
That why if you're going to be great, you be great. Why
but
keep
he still
it
gets
around
the benefit
you?
of it. Like he still gets free tickets to the games.
I was like, why not make the most of your relationships amongst these great people?
Yeah.
I mean, sounds good to me. You can have the quiet lifestyle and still get to benefit from everyone else's hard work kind of thing. No, that is not you, Megan.
I was going to be like, but how is he like me?
Sorry. It's one of those things like, so by the very end, so we have book 6 that we are getting to know Slughorn, and he's a collector. Mm-hmm. He collects his students. Mm-hmm. He's big on Hermione. Oh, yeah. Which as a Slytherin is kind of a big deal.
I mean, he's surprised that a Muggle-born is so smart, but
he still loved Lily.
Okay. Yes.
He loved Lily, and so he's not prejudiced in that way. Mm-hmm. He's smart enough to realize that greatness comes in all shapes and sizes.
Right, that's true.
So he's collecting these students, and I think it's kind of funny that after everything that happened with Draco, that Draco expected to be one of those collected students, and he wasn't. Yeah. He's like, had to sneak in. I don't know why I'm doing air quotes, sneak in to one of the parties. But so anyway, I will continue my long explanation of why Megan is like Slughorn. But it's a very long explanation to get to my point.
I'm a combination of Slughorn and Luna and... I'm just kidding.
But so you get through book 6. So we find out that Slughorn is the one that taught Tom Riddle about the Horcruxes, that started Voldemort on his murderous path to immortality and everything. And of course, by the time we figure all of this out, that Tom even left school, they figured he had already created one. Mm-hmm. I mean, he still had his diary there. Mm-hmm. And he was, there's a lot of prophecies that through book 6 that are not prophecies, memories that we go through with Harry and Dumbledore.
Learning about the Horcruxes.
Learning about where they came from, what they had about a lot of where Voldemort came from and his background. And Slughorn is at the kind of the center of that. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why they invited Slughorn to begin with. Anyway, Slughorn then stays on for the next year. He becomes head of Slytherin when Snape is now headmaster. And so he's head of Slytherin. But when the big battle comes, Slughorn's there.
Yeah.
When
he fights for the right side.
When his entire house has been basically kicked out because no one trusts him or whatever, like as a head of a household, he's still there. Mm-hmm. And he's part of the teachers that battle Voldemort at the very end. And I just thought that was so interesting and also important because obviously we can't have Snape as the only adult Slytherin we're looking at, because as we've discussed, he's terrible and we really don't know where.
Well, and at this point, like, it's been so drummed into our heads that Slytherins are evil, Slytherins are the worst, they're all Death Eaters.
Yeah, so
but it's nice to have that proof that that's not actually the case.
To have someone who puts the school and the children and the things that he believes in and is willing to stand up and fight for those against the evil that he knows. And I think, I don't know, maybe part of it comes from that he knew Tom. He was his teacher. True. He was his mentor. He was his head of house. Mm-hmm. He knew him from the time he was an 11-year-old boy going through Hogwarts himself. And he probably has some, I mean, it's the reason why he adjusted his memory in the first place.
Right.
Is that he had a lot of guilt.
Yeah.
That one of his beloved students became something so horrific. And I think Slughorn might have had some of those ideals of that's not what a Slytherin was meant to be.
Right.
And I think Slughorn gives us a better idea of what a Slytherin should be. Can they still be that idealist? Can they still be that, I don't want to say self-centered, what's the word I'm thinking of? I don't know. But self-satisfying? No, that doesn't sound right. I don't know. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking of. But I just think that then that's where I was thinking, oh, well, that's where you fit in. Like, if you were head of Slytherin, I can see that you still have that cunning and that ambition and that idea. But in the end, Slytherins are still insanely loyal.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And
100%.
And Slughorn found that his loyalties lie with the school and with his students. And that's my very long explanation. This is why Megan and Slughorn are Slytherins.
Thank you.
Does that sound better?
Yes.
Now that you went off? I was
sorry,
about to
but I'm like, Slughorn's so unlikable, you guys. But no, it's true.
I just felt so, I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't make my comment anymore because Megan just went off about how Slughorn's a terrible
It's not
person.
that I don't like Slughorn. He's kind of this really interesting character that kind of comes in the middle where you just keep learning that people are complicated. They're not one thing or the other. And the more Harry grows, the more he keeps seeing these complexities in all of these people, where he sees somebody like Slughorn, he's like, this guy is kind of an idiot. He's kind of ridiculous. Like, my friend, like, you know, I keep duping him where he tells me to make this potion and I came up with a Bezoar, like, and I still got all the points. You know, this guy must be such an idiot. And then he finds out, like, oh, Slughorn has this memory. Oh, Slughorn is actually really good at dueling. Like, oh, okay, there's a lot more to this guy that I didn't know or I didn't see. And again, that could be Harry being a 15, 16, 17-year-old and kind of having a limited worldview and not knowing that about people and not having really great examples as a lot of the adults anyway. Yeah. And especially for the Slytherins. And I so resent the fact, because in the movie it's Ron that says it, but in the book it's Hagrid that says there's not a witch or wizard who went bad who wasn't in Slytherin. So everybody just kind of just assumes, oh, all of the Slytherins are bad guys, except, and maybe I said this in the last podcast, but Gilderoy Lockhart was a Ravenclaw.
Yeah.
Peter Pettigrew was a Gryffindor. Like, you can find examples of the positive and the negative everywhere. And even, like, if you want another positive example of a Slytherin, we have Regulus Black, who is Sirius's little brother, who figured out the Locket Horcrux and sacrificed himself to, you know, get the Horcrux out of Voldemort's hand. He wasn't able to destroy it.
And I love that moment when you find that memory from, is it the memory from Creature? Mm-hmm. And you find out in book 7 that it was that Regulus was asked to do something that he felt uncomfortable with then as a Death Eater, and decided, this is not what I wanted. This is not what I signed up for, and tried to back out, and was obviously not given the option to back out, because no one just backs out of being a Death Eater.
Well, he got dragged under by all of the creepy people in the lake.
Well, then, so to find out that poor Creature has been dealing with this idea of leaving his master behind because he had to. Right. Because as an elf, he has to do what his master tells him to. And Creature is 100% loyal to his family. Yeah. And so it's one of those things, like, especially through book 5, you kind of are like, oh, Creature, he's so annoying. He's terrible. You kind of
because of you that Sirius dies.
So to come and have that understanding where Harry finally, I don't know, lets Creature in. He finally accepts Creature. I don't know at what point, what really to call what Harry does with Creature. Yeah. And he gives him the necklace back. He gives him the fake necklace or whatever and says, hey, this was your master's. And Creature is like all of a sudden loyal to Harry because he did something that was important to Creature and treated him more than just this half not human whatever. I want to say Creature because that's his name, but that a lot of the wizarding world looks down upon. Right. And when you think about it, we're like, well, where would your wizarding world be without them? Yeah, exactly. All of the wealthy families had house elves. Hogwarts has hundreds of them. Right. So I just thought it was fun to see more of Kreacher and to have Harry actually make that mature step.
Yeah.
And realizing that Sirius made a mistake in the way he treated Kreacher, and Harry wasn't going to repeat that mistake.
Yeah.
And that in the end, it actually benefited
all of the wizarding community.
Them in the long run. So,
yeah.
Yay, Kreacher.
Yay, Kreacher. Well, and take that one step. Like the whole house elf storyline that starts in book 4 really pays off because you have Hermione and her whole, Society for the Protection of Elvish Welfare. Elvish Welfare. Yeah, Spew. SPEW.
No, it's Spew.
She has this whole thing throughout, and she's always trying to be like, no, they want to be freed. And everybody's just like, no, but actually they really don't know what they would do. And it pays off like right at the end in the Room of Requirement where Ron's like, oh my gosh, where are the house elves? We have to get them out so that nobody can tell them to fight for our side and get killed. And Hermione's like, that's it. You are mine.
You're the one.
It's you and me
Love
forever
of my life.
now. And Harry is just like, is this really the proper moment? It's like this wonderful culmination of so many different storylines that pays off in such a beautiful, well-written way that I'm just like, there is no way that J.K. Rowling was making this up as she went along.
Well, I'm sorry for all of you haters out there that think that Harry and Hermione should have gotten together.
No.
You're wrong.
You are wrong.
Just so you know. You've heard it here with the ladies of Legendarium. Yeah. You're just wrong.
Ron and Hermione. Ugh, they just make me so happy.
And it is so much better in the book than it is in the movies. Their relationship makes no sense in the movies whatsoever. There's no build up in their relationship
it's mostly based on chemistry, but it's so awkward.
Like in the books, you get just these small snippets of where you see how like Ron is jealous, and then you get to see Hermione being jealous, especially throughout Ron's relationship with Lavender, and like everything that happens when in these books, particularly, and when you get to the point of their final, like they end up together, and like. Like, okay, like this is a huge payoff. Where in the movies, it's a little crappy.
It's strange.
Yeah, it's weird
how that works out. Speaking of strange and weird, Harry's relationship with Ginny, so much better in the books. Ginny is just a stronger character in the books. She's so much more interesting. They give her so much more time and development. Yeah. In the books. Yeah. Which is, it's one of those things. There's going to be things cut in movies. Nothing's going to be, you can't do. I mean, we're doing it now, and I'm still not happy about everything, but we're taking books and making TV series. Right. Which is like the new trend. Right. As opposed to taking books and turning them into movies. Right. And so you are allowed to get a little bit more information, a little bit more character development in a TV series that you don't get in a 2.5 hour movie. Right. Or an extended version of like a 4-hour movie. I don't think they're that long. Anyway, so I think it's just one of those things that just get cut and you kind of miss. Yeah. Well, and even having something as simple as like the way Harry breaks up with Ginny at the end of the Half-Blood Prince. And she's like, it's for some stupid noble reason, isn't it? And Harry's just like, yeah. But he just has kind of this thought process where he's like, I'm so grateful that she didn't cry and she didn't make a big deal about it and she wasn't dramatic. She was just like, okay. Like, it's one of the things that he liked about her, that she was strong and he didn't have to take care of her in that way. Oh, yeah, she totally was.
She's really mature for her age.
She's definitely a youngest sibling who has, like, much older brothers. Well, I was going to say brothers and sisters. But you'll see, like, I have a nephew who is 5, and his siblings who are next, the closest in age to him are 7 years older. And this kid thinks he's 12. Like, he thinks he's one of the 12-year-olds. And so he just grows up so much faster. And I think Ginny is kind of like that too, where she is so close, like with Bill. She and Bill have this great relationship and stuff. And I think she's a lot more mature because she is the youngest. Like, you could say, oh, she's the baby of the family, but also like the baby of the family wants to be like all of the older brothers and sisters.
You do things a lot earlier in life being the youngest than you do because the oldest always ends up having to do things with the youngest. And then the oldest, it finally gets to the point of, well, they're too old to continue doing things like this with the youngest sibling.
Right.
And so the youngest sibling then all of a sudden has to do it by themselves, kind of thing. Like, so you end up doing things in life earlier because your older siblings grow out of it, not because you've grown into it.
Exactly. Well, and again, like Ginny, I think it's fascinating because I'm like, oh, Ginny and Harry, but Ginny is her own, like she does her own thing. Like they're together, not really very much in the books. Yes, he has a big crush on her. After
not
a
as
while.
a real relationship. No.
Yeah, no, not really. Like, she develops on her own, and she has this huge crush on Harry for several years, and then she's like, well, nothing's coming of that, so I'm just gonna go do my thing and date Michael Corner and date Dean Thomas, and that's gonna go and live my life. And even after Harry doesn't come back to Hogwarts for his final year, like you said before, she and Neville and Luna kind of formed this core group of the Dumbledore's army in the school, and she becomes one of the leaders.
Well, and it's a really dangerous place for her to be.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, as a Weasley alone.
I don't think she goes back to Hogwarts after Christmas.
No, she doesn't.
Yeah.
She shows back up at the Room of Requirement when the rest of the family does for the final battle.
Even though she's not supposed to fight.
Yeah, but she's there.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of, since we're talking about Ginny and the Weasleys,
okay,
we're going to talk about my favorite moment ever, and it's when Molly attacks Bellatrix.
Oh my gosh!
I think,
yes, Molly.
I think it is both brilliantly done in the books. It is one of my favorite scenes in all of the movies. Now, I mean, it's one of those things like, it's, yes, this kick butt, older actress, like woman, and I can't remember the actress's name for the life of me, but she's so funny in everything I've ever seen her in.
Julie Walters.
Thank you.
Took me a second.
But I think she's phenomenal as Mrs. Weasley. I think she's just the epitome as a brilliantly cast actress for the character. But that book moment when she already is so frantic, so scared, she's already lost Fred. She's lost one child, which had to have been heartbreaking in and of itself.
Even when she's looking at her Patronuses and it's the dead twins, it was always that, like, she never considered the fact that they might be separated. She assumed that they would go.
And I think secretly that they might have been her favorites. I was one of those things, like, I could see her secretly just loving, not maybe like they're their favorites, but just having this special connection as their mother of they are frustrating and they anger her, but at the same time, like, that they are funny, and she's going to be laughing about whatever they just did that she just yelled at them for. She's going to go to her room and she's going to be like, okay, that was hilarious.
She finds it so frustrating because they do have so much potential, and she's like, what are you doing? You're so much better than this.
So I think so for her to turn around and be the one after Bellatrix has wreaked havoc on so many other people in these books, for it to be Molly Weasley to take her down when she goes to attack Ginny, I think is brilliant and perfect, and a great moment for Molly, who is just that motherly character that kind of gets thrown to the side at times.
That's all she ever is. She cooks, she cleans, she takes care of everyone. That's what she's distilled down to.
But she's a brilliant witch.
Yeah.
I love Molly, and maybe it's a little bit of now my age is showing being closer to that age than the 17-year-olds when I first read through these books, because I was in college when I think the last book came out.
Okay.
Oh, gosh. I was in college when the last book came out. And so it was a lot easier to relate to the teenagers.
Sure.
Because of my age. Where now, being an adult, having a family, being in a very different place in my life, rereading them now, I can still really enjoy them. I still had fun with them as much as they are a young adult written series. But you start thinking about some of the more adult characters and what they were going through, and you have like the side story you don't really hear much about, but between Lupin and Tonks and their relationship.
Right.
And you get more of what Arthur and Molly went through raising their family. And so I start maybe like thinking, going, okay, as the adults in this story, this is insane.
Where are the adults in this story? Yeah.
To allow these kids, I mean, so I can understand her frustrations through books, especially 5, when they're all at the Black House, and she's trying to keep these kids as protected as possible. And she seems to be the only one who is.
Right.
Out of all of the adults that come through, I mean, you have Mad Eye, you have Lupin, you have Tonks, you have Sirius that's there. She's really the one true, let's keep these kids as young, as innocent as possible for as long as possible. And so I don't know. Anyway, long explanation of a point, but
that is an interesting point though. Young people are always in such a hurry to grow up, not realizing how long they're going to be adults. You're really gonna once you get to that point, I don't know what it means to be an adult for each individual person. For me, I think it was after I moved, I finished college and I moved out of my house and paid my own rent and got my own insurance. And, it was at that point that I felt like I was an adult, and I never really looked back, and I didn't rely on my parents as much in that please take care of me physically kind of way. I still call all the time. I visit all the time. They support me emotionally so well. But, I think that's something that Molly really knew, especially having been a young person in the first Wizarding War, was that you only get to be a kid for so long. So you need to protect that for your kids as long as you can. Because once things get real and you're a grown-up, you have to be a grown-up for the rest of your life. There's no going back. And it's I think for Harry, a lot of that, that shift for him, he kind of becomes an adult after Cedric Diggory dies. And so those first 4 books are these very fun, lighthearted, oh, I'm a wizard. What a crazy world. Oh, who's the bad guy this year? Oh, who's the bad guy? The first 4 books are kind of set up as mysteries. And then the last 3 books are a war story. And this child fighting in a war and leading in a war and being somebody that people are looking up to and expecting him to have the answers and to know things. And he doesn't. And every person that he relies on Sirius, and Sirius is killed. He relies on Dumbledore, and Dumbledore is killed. And it really does and he's in Order of the Phoenix, all of his mentors there are taken out, where he kind of gets to the point, he's there are no more members of the Order left. And then he realizes too late that Severus Snape is one of, he's oh, I could have gone to that guy. I don't like him, but I could have gone to him, and so he really is forced to be an adult, and he's forced to be on his own. And, people make fun of the Deathly Hallows as Harry being camping, but this is him the first time he's gone out in the world. He doesn't have the structure. He doesn't have a home to go back to. He can't go to Hogwarts. There's nobody to cook and clean for him anymore. He has to take care of all of that by himself or rely on one of his friends. And we all know how that works out, because poor Hermione feels like she has to do all the work. And Ron, has especially been protected his whole life, doesn't deal with that well.
Well, and Ron has the added stress of his entire family is fighting this war and not knowing and not having any way to communicate with them.
Poor Ron has these divided loyalties because he's pledged himself to Harry, but he doesn't know what's going on at home. And so these poor kids are forced to grow up. And it was an interesting conversation. Last year in 2020, when 3 months before the school year ended, all of a sudden, here in the States, I don't know exactly what it was like in other places in the world, but here in the States, kids were sent home and it was online learning for the last 3 months. And prom was canceled, graduation was canceled, all of these things were canceled. And those kids didn't get the senior year or the end of the school year, whatever age they were, that they thought they were going to get, that everybody looks forward to. Mm-hmm. And man, that sucks. And I don't have kids. I can't relate in the same way, but I had a conversation with a couple of my friends where they were lamenting about these things, and they're Harry Potter fans. So it was appropriate that I said this. Otherwise, they would have been like, Megan, you don't even know. I don't. But a similar thing happened to Harry, Ron, and Hermione, where they were supposed to go back for their 7th year and take their newts and, have like these amazing experiences their senior year. And Hermione would have been head girl. Mm-hmm. And maybe Ron would have been head boy and achieved that dream that he'd had since the first book. And, gone and played Quidditch and had just this amazing experience. But instead, they had to camp in the freezing cold and have warding spells every night and change where they were living every night because they weren't safe, because they had to save the world. Like, that was literally the job that was given to them. They weren't kids anymore. And so like you said, I can totally understand Molly wanting to protect those kids. And maybe she was the only one who did want that. But she knew, like, once you're an adult and you can't go back. Mm-hmm. And it is canon that Hermione does go back and finishes her 7th year later. But, the rest of them, they're just like, no, we're out. Well, and I think about those kids who are at Hogwarts, like Neville, who's at Hogwarts for his 7th year. And Snape is the headmaster, and the Carrows are the teachers, and all of the kids are learning to torture each other and get points for it. And it's just like the most miserable experience. Yeah. And it's just so awful when you have this hope and this expectation of what your life is going to be, and then it goes so sideways and you have no control. But I would imagine it would be even worse if the responsibility for fixing it was put on you and you're 17.
Yeah. I wouldn't have been strong enough. I was a pretty over-traumatic 17-year-old.
Oh, I absolutely was. You were talking about, I think it was before we started recording, but you were talking about what you were like as an 11-year-old. I cried a lot. A lot. To the point where it was really annoying to other people. So I would not have been able to handle it.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I would not have been. I was lavender brown. Wouldn't have been able to handle it.
I wouldn't have been good at that. So,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how much we want to delve into the 7th book.
I feel like we need to talk about the Horcruxes and the Hallows, but we've been talking for such a long time.
I know, this is turning into a really long episode, so maybe we should cut it here.
Okay.
And we were discussing, and maybe on Discord or something, let Megan and I know. We were talking about maybe doing a live episode.
Yeah.
If that's something our listeners would be interested in.
A live stream on YouTube.
I'm still like, let's maybe talk about that.
Sure.
Or we can do a final episode. We'll do a 3-part Harry Potter episode.
The 3rd episode may or may not be as long as this one.
Because this one was really long. I don't know why I thought it was a good idea to do these 3 books in one episode.
I went along with it.
But so we can either do a live episode, finish talking about book 7. We can talk about whatever the listeners want to talk about. Yeah. Or we can just get together randomly on a night of our choosing and just not tell anyone and talk about book 7 till our heart's content.
So until we die, in my case.
We're going to be here for hours and hours and hours talking about this. But so we're going to end it here. We've touched on book 7. I think we've done a fairly good jumping between book 5 and book 6 and kind of discussing all of the important things that happened in that.
I think so.
I mean, we still have a lot of deaths we haven't covered.
Yeah.
A lot of people die in book 7. A lot of I'm going to rephrase this. A lot of characters die in book 7. I'm not going to say people, but a lot of characters.
They feel like people.
So a lot of characters die in book 7 that we haven't touched on, and I feel like we should.
No. Well, and we learned a lot more about Harry's past and Harry's family and Snape.
So we kind of touch on Snape. We'll delve into book 7 in another episode. Whether we do a live episode with all of our whoever wants to join us, or if it's just the 2 of us again, we'll do one more.
Yeah,
one more.
Let us know on Discord what you think. What you would like us to do. If you want to be a part of that like an active part of the conversation, or if you just, say, hey, here are some questions that I have. Go at it.
Yeah.
Your vote matters. We may decide what we want to do anyway, but your vote matters. We do actually want to know, because that could be really fun doing a live stream.
Yeah, it would be. And it's just me and Megan, and we're always so much fun. So anyway, thank you so much for listening to us. Thank you for joining our conversation. We hope that you are enjoying listening to Megan and I talk about Harry Potter, because I know we are enjoying talking about it
so much.
You can join our conversation if you have anything that you want to say to us. Make sure to tag us on the conversation on Discord.
I'm evil alien princess Megan.
And I am Teffers.
I should have picked a smaller name, but I like it.
So you can tag us on Discord. You can please support the podcast on Patreon and enjoy listening to us wherever you enjoy your podcasts. And we will talk to you later.